Okay, everyone, so welcome to our first CILIPS Go Green recording. We are so excited to welcome Rowan, Lear and Bobbie Winter-Burke from Glasgow Seed Library. Thank you so much for joining us. Could we start by perhaps you just introducing the Seed Library to us, telling us a bit about how it works and what inspired you both to get involved?
Yeah, I can kick off with that. So yeah, like you said, my name's Rowan and I look after Glasgow Seed Library, which began in 2019. So it's fairly new, it's quite recent. And it was born out of Centre of Contemporary Arts in Glasgow on Sauchiehall Street. Kind of an artist project and a curator project kind of combined and produced this idea to set up a seed library for the city, because at that point there wasn't any seed libraries in the city. And I got involved a little bit later that year, yeah, maybe just a couple of months after it kicked off. And it began as a kind of, I guess, a really straightforward container. So we had a really nice cabinet, lots of seeds labelled and sort of publicly available for people to borrow at any point. And they were just hosted, I think they were originally in the front window of CCA, and then we realised it was very hot there, so we moved them to another area. But generally it was quite hands-off. It was sort of like, seed libraries here, anyone could come borrow seeds. There was a kind of checkout system, but it wasn't like, I don't know if it was super used. You could sign out your seeds, but you could also just come and get seeds. And so that was the original ethos. And then I think when I got involved, we were setting up a steering group, which included quite a few other groups around the city. And one of the things we realized is that it's almost like we didn't just need to take care of the seed side, we needed to look after seed savers as well. And that would involve a little bit more engagement with people. I think we kind of recognized that seed saving is a skill, and that skill's kind of been lost a little bit. A lot of people don't have those memories of seed saving that maybe their grandparents did, or yeah, even maybe sometimes their parents did. It's sort of something we're out of practice of. So at that point, we started to shift the model a little bit and think about how we might reach out a bit more to people and engaging with the seed library. But I can maybe stop there because we'll talk a bit more about that, I guess, later. And of course, we've had a pandemic in the middle, so everything's changed a bit.
When you hear 2019, a project started in 2019, you've got to be very, very brave very quickly.
Yeah. Bobbie, if you wanted to, you've got a slightly different relationship to Seed Library, but you're also definitely part of the Seed Library.
Thanks, Rowan. I think I joined the mailing list because I work at the Glasgow School of Art next door to the CCA, so I've always kind of got the emails and seen what's going on there. And I think I joined the mailing list either 2019 or 2020, probably 2020. My memories, the last year is quite fuzzy, but yeah, so I started receiving seeds, and I thought I didn't really have anywhere to grow or the knowledge to kind of do it, and then started getting seeds and joining the seed socials and things like that, and have just taken over my every windowsill that I've got and my outdoor space. And I had an allotment for a bit of last year and just tried to sort of learn. And I think that's what's really great about it, is it's the skills as well as the I guess it's what we do in libraries. You know, we're trying to sort of make sure that people can access stuff but also know how to use it.
Absolutely, it sounds like it's literally grown then if you're part of the fun in every sense. And I love that sense of the education aspects that are coming out of it, and also the terminology. You know, people are borrowing the seeds. Was the idea of it being a library very important to you? Is that a key part of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely not a seed bank, which is quite a different idea. So a seed bank is, as you might know, it's I guess a place for long-term storage of genetic diversity in seeds and crops. So like the most famous one, I think, is the one in Scandinavia that's like deep underground in the ice, and it's, you know, all the seeds are frozen. Seed libraries are a very different idea, obviously, and it's this idea that we are still wanting to kind of maintain varieties of plants, and kind of I guess that side of it is really important, but we do that by loaning out the seeds, and those seeds ideally they'll be grown, and they'll be grown in Glasgow, and they'll be returned from Glasgow growers. And we start to kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but kind of amass a collection of seeds that are very much like adapted for our climate here, and adapted for things like our soil, and adapted for like, yeah, I guess different aspects. In Glasgow itself has quite a bit of different microclimate, diversity of climate around it as well. So we're trying to track where things are grown around Glasgow too. And I guess it starts to become much more embedded in the community. It's not, you know, I think the idea is that people start to, or reclaim a very different relationship to seeds and to the things that they grow. So it's not about ordering from a kind of random seed company, getting your seeds, growing, that's it. It's if you borrow seeds from the seed library, especially I think in a few years when we have a lot more returns, you borrow seeds from the seed library, like someone else, maybe in your community, you might know them and you might not know them, has invested a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of attention and a lot of care into producing that packet of seeds. And I think that's, I guess it does a kind of reinvesting value, like into the things that you grow and into the things that you eat as well. And yeah, I think that's that's been part of our mission. In terms of the library, I think it's called the library, but I was really interested to like have Bobbie join us as well to reflect on what that means, because I don't know a great deal about libraries other than I've always used them. But it'd be interesting to hear from the other side. Yeah, how you think about that relationship.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think what my experience of being a librarian now is you know, we provide access, we provide spaces for students to come in and other users to come in, but really it's like it's much more about, well, especially my role is much more about teaching, much more about kind of you know, we're not gatekeepers anymore. I think the idea of a librarian is, you know, you can't get into this knowledge without passing through me, and that kind of, I think the librarian changing from you know, being the expert in something to, that's really, I think that idea has really changed. And I think I see myself as much more like, you know, especially working with art students, I'm not the expert. I'm going to give you the tools, hopefully, to be able to kind of feel comfortable in these spaces and know how to get what you need from them to be able to create. And I guess that's kind of similar maybe to what you're talking about with the seed library. And I think a lot of what we talk about with colleagues at the moment as well, when we think, you know, we're thinking a lot about kind of inclusive spaces, it's really about a lot of people that access our libraries don't feel like they're for them. And I think that's something that's really, really interesting when I've got more involved in thinking about seed libraries and about, you know, what growing is. And I didn't really feel like I have access to nature or access to these skills. So I think that's really interesting. I don't know if that was what you were thinking, Rowan, in terms of the library as a thing.
Yeah,
I guess it's changed so much.
I mean, the format has changed a little bit, but I think the ideas that you talked about, so like not being a gatekeeper, is super important, and is something like I'm wary of it coming back as well. I think it's very easy to accidentally gatekeep, particularly over the pandemic. You know, it unfortunately just had to go online, so we had to ask people to request things online, and I think that opened it up to a lot of people. But it probably did close it off to other people. So that's something I'm quite aware of. So for example, you were talking about, Kristen, the pop-up at the Glasgow Women's Library. That was obviously a way of making it much more accessible. You could just take them. You didn't have to register. You didn't have to do anything. At that point, you just get the seeds. And I think it's there's always a tension, I think, between maintaining that absolute openness, but also, you know, we do want people to be able to return seeds, and that does take some engagement and some care, and, you know, maybe some training or some kind of skill sharing. So you need a bit of both. You need to be quite hands off, but also like a little bit more hands on, and that's something I think will always be balancing a little bit. And also just you were talking about experts, and it was probably quite a good thing that I came in with a lot of interest in the seed library, but I was not an expert, and I'm not an expert now either in, you know, growing things or saving seed, or, you know, I'm learning as well, which is super helpful because it means that, or I feel it's been super helpful because it means that I've been on the journey as well with a lot of our seed savers. And sometimes people ask a question and I'm like, really good question, like, let's find out the answer.
That's the classic call in a library, isn't it? If we don't know the answer, we will help you find it. And it sounds like it's got such an empowering quality, what you're doing. And I think that engagement with communities is really, it's especially the year that people have had. That sounds such a worthwhile thing to be doing. You mentioned the pandemic there. So you went online, because obviously we've heard some of the wonderful venues you worked with, Glasgow Women's Library, CCA. Was there a bit of a push-pull then? Because it sounds as if the localism and the local community is so relevant to what you're doing, but how did online work? It sounds like it brought some positives as well as challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously combined with a year when people didn't have a lot else to do apart from grow if they could, and they really wanted to grow things. Also not being able to access seeds because seed companies were sold out for quite a long time. I guess garden centres and places were also closed for a while, quite a crucial period. So that combined with, we kind of, I don't remember what we actually did, but it would have been probably a post on social media and probably something on the CCA website. But I can't remember if we had a mailing list by that point. You know, just kind of spreading the word like lightly about there being a seed library and that we could bring seeds to people. At that point, we weren't using, we actually didn't have a budget for post, but also was a bit unsure about the ethics of using the postal service at that point. So I instead did quite a lot of cycling around Glasgow, delivering seeds to people, which
eco-friendly as well. So
yeah, I mean, it was quite exhausting, but it also gave me something to do, so that was nice. I got to see lots of Glasgow, and it was really at that point quite spread out around the city, so it was north, south, east, west, you know, up and down the river. So it was really nice to, yeah, and also to meet people face to face, you know, at a distance or through a window, but at least you know who they are, they can see who you are, and get a sense of how people are growing, because, you know, people are growing in very different places in Glasgow. Some lucky people have allotments and they have quite a lot of space. Allotments do bring their own problems when you're trying to seed save. Other people are growing in their windowsills like I do, or maybe have access to like a shared garden or a shared back green. Other people might just have front steps. And I guess that's something that we benefited from, not just from me being able to see people, but from people filling out a request form, is that we actually asked, what kind of space do you have? Like, how much space do you have? Because it's, I mean, not to police or to like stop people getting seeds, but just to kind of find out, well, what do people have? What do people need? Like, who's interested in seed saving? And I think it's really amazing that so many people are interested in seeds who didn't have a lot of growing space. And that's definitely something we've been thinking more about, is how can we maybe campaign or advocate for more space for people to grow, or to, I was say occupy, that's maybe not the right word, but to take up space maybe in community gardens around the city, with it specifically for seeds, for example. So start to think about how we can distribute and also give people access to land that they might not normally have access to.
Sounds like it's having a really strong impact and actually kind of circumventing a lot of the barriers that might have held people back in the past from growing, whether that's the physical restraints of space, or actually having the knowledge or having the boldness to actually say, I'll give it a go, and feel that you're part of a community where that's okay to do. So who makes up the seed library then? How many are involved? Are you all volunteers? How's it, because I know you mentioned about funding for posts and things like that. How is it working at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably helpful, yeah, if anyone's thinking of setting up a seed library, to know what we set up with. And it's set up on a £500 a year budget from CCA, and that in the first year paid for like the cabinet and like envelopes and things. And then I guess we've had 2 lots of that now, and so I tend to spend that budget almost entirely on seeds, on envelopes. Like, I did have one. oh, which I just dropped. Wait, seeds, envelopes, labels, I think some other kind of basic bits of, I guess, I don't know what you call that, kind of collection kit. We paid for some postage this year, so we posted seeds, I think about 100 seed packets we posted. And generally, I think that just looks after the upkeep of the library. So it's not a huge amount of money. You could do it on less as well, like especially if you have more people returning seed year on year, you won't need to spend so much on seeds to begin with. And then it started with essentially a voluntary project. So I was working as a volunteer until last November. I started to be paid 1 day a week. And that's what I do now, is have 1 day a week that I specifically work on the seed library. And we also got a Kickstart placement called Alchemy, who has been incredible support and done a lot. Yeah, just really helped out a huge amount with because this year we started to run workshops in person, or this summer, and we also established a seed bed at a community garden in the north of the city. To be honest, it just wouldn't. I had the plan to do it before and I was all ready for it, but if we didn't have Alchemy, who works 4 days a week at the moment, like we would never be able to manage like the plot of land. It's like far too much work, which is a good learning as well, to understand how much it takes to like really look after things that are growing outdoors. But yeah, that's what it looks like at the moment. I'm hoping that we can get myself and Alchemy supported with some funding for the, like, I guess from the end of this year, to keep us going maybe a few days a week. But yeah, so I don't know. I know lots of other seed libraries have different models, though, and I know some that are purely voluntary, some that are kind of run very cooperatively between different people, and there are some that are kind of entirely institutional, you know, and kind of much more centrally organized. And I think we're kind of a cross between those two poles, maybe. I think it also depends who's running it. So I know Perthshire Seed Library, for example, is run by, I think they're called Perthshire Organic Gardeners. So the group that run it already have, you know, a huge amount of expertise in growing, and some of them like know quite a lot about seed saving already. So you're already kind of spreading out the kind of, I guess, the intellectual work and the intellectual labor, and like that's already contained within the group. But they're looking to work with their local library, the public library, to, I think, locate the seed library, or potentially locate the seed library, or work together on workshops around that seed library. So I think it's like, yeah, all about working in partnership as well. So for us, it's been really, really important to work, like for example, the Glasgow Women's Library, to work with Lamb Stables Community Gardens, to work with actually Govan Hill People's Pantry, where the seed library is living at the moment. So yeah, it's looking for partnerships that can be mutually beneficial, I guess. And I guess the aim of everyone is to get more seeds out there to people.
Absolutely. I'm just blown away by all the kind of, you associate it with, there's the positive impact in terms of the growing itself, but on the communities, on the partnerships, just on ways of working. It sounds like from this seed of an idea, these wonderful things are generated. Sorry, the puns are just, the growing puns are just oh, that's so powerful to hear. So you mentioned that Perthshire have their own seed library running as well. If our members, so CILIPS members are across Scotland, but if they, and beyond I should say, but if they wanted to get involved, what would your advice be? I mean, certainly anybody in Glasgow or the surrounding area, would they be able to get in touch with yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, that like any libraries in Glasgow, I mean, one of the things we were thinking about I was thinking about quite a long time ago was, I think when I was cycling around looking at all these public libraries, like in the edges of a city, and thinking, God, it would be great just to have a seed library like extension here. But yeah, I'd love to speak to librarians in Glasgow. I think there's something about localism as well, which you mentioned earlier. I would say Glasgow Seed Library is kind of quite a vast geographic area that we're covering. I'm sure we're not covering it, but you know, that's the remit. And I think more local initiatives are also really good, or smaller scale initiatives. At the same time as I know there's a kind of Scotland Seed Network being set up, or maybe already set up at the moment, so the seed libraries can talk to each other. I think it's really important to keep speaking to each other, because I know the Perthshire Seed Library and Perth, I guess Perth and Kinross libraries, they both had this idea for a seed library, and it would have been so kind of frustrating if they'd both set up separate ones, but the fact that they can now work together is just really good. And I guess pooling resources and stuff. But I don't know, Bobbie, have you been thinking about a seed library or connections to the seed library and GSA?
Yeah, I have been thinking about it. I'll share this video around with colleague and see if we can start something. We've yeah, there's lots and lots of people that are really interested in this, and people that have been coming along to events. So I guess for people from CILIPS who, you know, they can check out on the CCA website about the next couple of things that are happening and maybe come along. But yeah, I definitely think something, as many sort of little I don't know, outposts of these ideas as possible. There's, especially I think with libraries, there's so many really interesting sort of ways that you can talk about it, and it's very practical, but it's also a really interesting way to sort of delve into things that we're talking about a lot already, like you know, inclusivity, but also like decolonizing, and whose knowledge do we value, and does it have to be written down for it to be important, and things like that. So I think it's a really good sort of talking point, and I'll definitely be we're talking quite a lot about, you know, sustainability and inclusivity and how that kind of overlaps quite a bit already. And I think, yeah, it'd be great to have a sort of seed library. And I'm also, so I've got all the seed packets from the seed library, but also friends we've started like sharing just amongst ourselves. I've got family in London that have posted things up to me as well. So it's just it's such a nice thing to be doing, and like sending pictures about what's worked and what hasn't. So I think, yeah, definitely GSA should get involved. And there's land at the new Stowe building. But it would be great, you know, to get students involved.
Yeah, I also was thinking about books as well, so I brought some of my seed books, and I have the children's seed book, which is really good.
But I think school libraries would be another wonderful collaboration. That would be such a wonderful project for them.
And this is a kind of really helpful guide to seed saving, and yeah, I have a pile of more books. But I think like what you just mentioned about the angle, there's so many different angles you can take with the seed library, and yeah, and it's also, you can engage people, you know, from really young children to, like, you know, lots of different adults, different interests. And a relationship to climate change is like really relevant, really important. And I guess that's something that we were hoping to do, and maybe will still do when we go back into the CCA building with the seed library, is to have a little kind of reference library there of books that people can, well, it might be also a takeaway library, I'm not sure, but yeah, books that people can refer to find out a little bit more, not just about practical how to save seed, although I think that's really important, but also like the history of seed saving, cultures of seed saving, like relationship to decolonizing and colonization, and to things like indigenous cultures of seed saving, where they've done it for a really long time and consistently done it. And things like where do our vegetables come from? So it's super important to us as well, as thinking about those bigger ideas, that you almost, by saving seed, the act of saving seeds, like you're entangled in these much kind of longer histories. Going to kind of continue to explore those through sort of talks and things like that, related to the seed library.
That's wonderful, because I mean, as you touched on, Bobbie, these are issues that are affecting all libraries in all shapes or forms. You know, these are the questions that we're asking, and it's such a positive way to approach them and to learn more. We would love to have a reading list from you, Rowan, if we could accompany this video.
Yeah, seed reading group.
Oh yes, please. I'll join. I'm sure a lot of our members would want to join in with that as well. Wonderful. And we've touched on inclusivity a little bit there. I was wondering how, because it sounds like there's quite a tricky balancing act for you quite often between sort of empowering people to go off on their own, but also offering that support. How have you find it best to negotiate these issues of inclusivity in the work you're doing?
I mean, for sure, Bobbie can probably give some feedback on that, but for sure, I don't think we've resolved it. I think we're trying to have a very accessible kind of approach, and trying to have the attitude of like, just give it a go, like have a go. But at the same time, like I said, there's a steering group that looks after the seed library, and it's a little bit more there are people who are much more maybe really concerned and kind of appropriately concerned about the like I have Sutherland kale seed here, which is a fairly rare like kale that it comes from the Highlands or is bred in the Highlands, and so people are really concerned about saving that particular seed and making sure it's genetically viable and will survive into the future and and will thrive. And I think that's really important, and that means that people need quite a bit of skill to be able to like save that seed successfully. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't think we've answered it, but I think in terms of accessibility, our first couple of workshops didn't even talk about seeds, but were about the things that people like maybe needed to begin their journeys. It would be helpful if they knew how to make a very simple, cheap container out of scrap wood to build to plant. Sorry, to sow their seeds in and grow their plants in. So like started with container building and planter building, and then we had a workshop on like soil ecologies and making sure the soil is kind of super nutritious and how to look after it, again very cheaply, using the things that are around you, using weeds and stuff like that to look after your soil, and kind of giving you a very accessible, hopefully quite accessible understanding of what's happening beneath the surface. And in a way, like I feel like that's part of the making it more accessible, is thinking about like the whole life of a seed. So all the stages it has to go through, and like all the things that a seed saver is going to encounter. You're not gonna, so I actually have a little, I'll show you my little tomato, little tomato here.
Oh,
So I mean, we don't, you don't begin with like your lovely ripe tomatoes and then start to seed save. You begin by sowing that tomato and then watching it grow and fighting off any pests that come and get it and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a real balance. I think, yeah, I'd love to hear tips as well and how to do that and how to keep people engaged as well, because I know I've already witnessed this, that there's a real rush of interest at the beginning of spring, and then people's lives come in, they have lots to do, the plants maybe don't do so well, and there's a bit of disappointment, and it's you need to kind of work to keep people engaged with it, and yeah, so I'm kind of learning as well how best to do that. Bobbie, I don't know if you
I was just going to say something that really struck me from I think the first social that I went along to was about thinking about the foods that like was grown in Glasgow or can grow in Glasgow, but also about the people that have come to Glasgow and bringing heritage vegetables or whatever and new crops here that then can be adapted to the climate, the very challenging climate that we have, which is currently glorious but hasn't been. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, the kinds of communities that are in Glasgow now and how they can be involved. And I guess we've got the Govan Hill Carnival this weekend, which is an amazing sort of celebration of different communities in the south side. And I think that's what you kind of emphasised quite a bit about how you saw the Seed Library in Glasgow moving, and I thought that was really interesting. I think that's a great way to sort of food is such a great conversation and gap bridging.
Yeah, it's something we hold in common, isn't it? Wherever we've been or wherever we go, like we eat. So we don't all grow, which is the thing, but maybe our ancestors have grown, and yeah, like you said, stuff was grown here for a very long time, and I guess that's something I'd love to explore more. I'm really hoping to be able to fund a kind of artist residency program or a kind of thinker residency program where people can come and maybe do a bit more research or make work in relation to things like what has been grown here and where it's come from and the people who've grown them as well.
That sounds wonderful, because I was going to ask what your plans are for the next year or the long term, but you've taken that. It sounds absolutely wonderful, and I think you're right that culturally and in terms of communities, it's such a tangible way to embed that sense of belonging and reciprocity. So it's amazing work that you're doing. Could I ask then for one top tip for, in fact, actually, we should probably touch on COP26 itself. I'm thinking that's the overall. Have you got any particular plans to mark COP26 as a library?
Yeah, so we're going to be continuing with our workshop program. So there will be some things happening. I'm trying to remember what they are now. We're going to be doing quite a few seed deposit workshops where people come and I think we'll do some threshing of some seeds, so stamping on seeds and extracting seed and podding peas and things like that. So hopefully that'll be quite messy and fun.
Sounds very therapeutic, to be honest.
Yeah. We've got a really exciting talk coming up on the 5th of October with an Indigenous seed keeper from United States, Turtle Island. And she's called Elizabeth Hoover, and she's going to be just giving a bit of an insight into her own sort of Indigenous seed keeping journey, and some of the things that they've been growing. So that should be a really lovely conversation, thinking about kind of resilience and survival, especially around climate change, but I guess, yeah, other forms of survival too. And then have we got anything else? I feel like there'll be more things happening, but I've forgotten what they are.
All that sounds wonderful. There's definitely a home for them in the CILIPS events calendar, so to send everything through. We will make sure that our members spread the word. So this has been an absolutely incredible, thank you so much for sharing all these insights with us. I mean, I was interested in as I said, it was in Glasgow Women's Library I first encountered the Seed Library and thought it was such an inspiring initiative, but I had no idea of the power behind it, the conversations that are happening, and just the really sort of rewarding work that you're doing for communities and inspiring people in so many ways. Could we perhaps conclude? Do you have one top tip? So our members are everybody's obviously at a different stage of their kind of environmental journey about their learning. What would be one good place to start, do you think, for anybody watching this?
Oh my God, one place to start. I think there's something that they say, because I'm doing a few seed training courses, let's say seed saving training courses, to learn how to save seed commercially, or to do it a bit more seriously. And there's one thing they talk about, which is about being attentive. So being attentive to your plants. Saving seed doesn't mean just leaving a patch to go to seed and ignoring it until the seeds are ready. It actually means spending a lot of time with them and attending to them. And I think that would be my tip probably for anyone thinking about setting up a seed library or interested in seed saving, is like attending to your situation, like what's already happening there, what's already growing, like who is already growing, who needs space to grow, this kind of thing. So attending to your environment and what people need. And maybe you have some expert seed savers that they maybe wouldn't call themselves seed savers and they wouldn't call themselves experts, but actually they've got like maybe a lot of knowledge, ancestral information that just would be beautiful to share. So I think maybe being attentive, if that's not too vague.
No, that's cool. And even as you're saying that, I think libraries so often play that role because you're a kind of centre in a community where you can provide that space for the conversations or for the practical act of growing. And at the same time, you just want to tap into all that the richness of the community knowledge that is all around us, I'm sure. Oh, well, so thank you so much. I am just absolutely blown away by all that you're doing. And we wish you all the very best with it. We shall certainly be seeding the CILIPS event calendar with all the wonderful stuff that you've got coming up. And we'll make sure that the links go out, and hopefully either in Glasgow or beyond, we will get more growers and more seed savers in the country, which can only be a good thing. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, and yes, thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much for having us. Thanks, Bobbie.
Thank you.